I'm going to be reading to you Chapter 3 from The Double Life of Pocahontas by Jean Fritz. Now, what I want you to do is follow along with me as I read, follow along in your book. Now, this can be your first reading or your third reading. Remember, your second reading is working with vocabulary and finding answers to the questions from the study guide. Okay, I'm going to begin. As soon as the Indians had made sure that John Smith was out of the way, they descended on Jamestown. No Captain Smith to stop them now, nothing to be afraid of. They'd get rid of the whole colony, starve the settlers out, kill their hogs, murder anyone caught outside the fort, steal their guns. Outside the fort day and night, rain or shine, through the fall, winter, and spring, the natives lay in ambush waiting. "Ya-ha-ha, te-wa-ta, te-wa-ta," they sang whenever they saw an Englishman, whenever they thought the English could hear them, whenever they killed one. It was a taunting song they had made up. "Ya-ha-ha." Every death they sang gave them new weapons. "Ya-ha, te-wa-ta, te-wa-ta." Each death another gun. And the settlers, wrangling among themselves, seemed helpless without John Smith to tell them what to do and make them do it. Danger, which often brings out the best in people, brought out the worst in them. This year became known as the starving time. Imprisoned inside their fort, the settlers suffered more hunger, more sickness than they ever had. More people died. Captain Archer was one of them, and more were killed. Once 40 men, lured up the river by a promise of corn, allowed themselves to become separated from each other, and all were killed. Ratcliffe was tied to a tree and slowly tortured to death. By the end of the winter, the settlers had eaten what few horses they had, including their hides, all their dogs, and every mouse and rat they could catch. Some settlers ran away to live with any Indians who would take them. Some begged Indians to take their swords and guns in exchange for even a few grains of corn. One man secretly roasted his dead wife and was hanged for it. Out of a population of 500 in the spring of 1610, only 60 men, women, and children were left. Powhatan, who had moved to a village farther away from the English than Werowocomoco, followed the news closely. He was over 70 years old now, and after a lifetime of fighting, he was tired. In his last interview with John Smith, he had spoken of his longing for peace. "Think you I am so simple," he had said according to John's account, "not to know it is better to eat good meat, lie well, and sleep quietly with my women and children, laugh and be merry, than to be so hunted by you that I can neither rest, eat, nor sleep? But my tired men must watch, and if a twig but break, every one crieth, 'There cometh Captain Smith.'" Now, class, this last section, when I was quoting Powhatan here, or actually quoting someone saying what Powhatan said, it's in the language of this time, and so that's why it sounds different. That's why the spelling is a little bit different. Continuing. Now that the Jamestown colony was all but wiped out, Powhatan looked forward to quiet days. Soon the land would be his again, and life would walk in time with the seasons. Meanwhile, Powhatan took pleasure in the guns he had collected during the last year. He didn't know how to use them, but that didn't matter. He owned them. All that secret power. It was enough simply to look at the guns, to handle them, to pick them up and put them down, every one of them his. Of course, Pocahontas too longed for peace. Several times she had helped John's countrymen escape from her father's warriors, but it was hard being pulled from one loyalty to another. Now, with John gone, she tried to put his world completely behind her. she made frequent trips to the Potomac country, which was as far as she could get from Jamestown, and still be in friendly territory. In the spring of 1610, Pocahontas was 14, old enough to marry, and this is what she did. Nothing is known of her Indian husband except his name, Captain Cocoum. Perhaps Powhatan arranged the marriage. Perhaps Pocahontas chose Cocoum herself, out of love or out of need, simply to help her forget. Grieving as she must have for John Smith, she may have found it hard to feel the familiar oneness of her old world. In any case, she understood that John's settlement could not last much longer. Once the English were gone, surely it would be as if they had never been there. Even the trees would feel the difference. What no one in Virginia knew, however, was that Captain Newport's flagship had not sunk 10 months before as everyone had supposed. Instead, it had been swept on to one of the Bermuda Islands, and although the ship itself had been destroyed, all 150 passengers had managed to get ashore safely. And there they had been ever since, living off the fruit of the land, off wild hogs and tortoises, off fish and birds. They built themselves cabins and thatched them with palmetto leaves. And they built 2 large boats, using oak planks from the wrecked ships and timber from cedar trees, which they cut. On May 10th, 1610, they climbed into the boats and set sail for Jamestown. On May 23rd, they arrived, expecting to move into a well-ordered colony. But of course, as one passenger said, everything was contrary to our expectations. The place was a shambles. The survivors barely surviving. Governor Gates went straight to the church and had the bell rung to call everyone together. Those who could still walk joined the newcomers for a service in which they prayed to be saved. They knew they couldn't save themselves. The newcomers had only a few days' supply of food. The settlers, none. Even among the Indians, there was not enough food to fight for. This was planting time, not harvest time. For 2 weeks, Governor Gates tried to find a way to keep the colony going, but in the end he gave up. If they didn't all want to starve together, he said, there was nothing to do but abandon Jamestown and go back to England. So, on the 7th of June, Governor Gates ordered that drums be beaten while the settlers boarded their boats. They had already buried their cannon, and the men who owned armor had buried it as well. Perhaps some believed that they would come back, but some were so glad to be done with Jamestown, they wanted to burn it to the ground before they left. Nothing would suit them better than to sail down the river, watching the flames devour the place that had proved such a curse to them. After all, why not? As soon as they had left, the Indians would take over anyway. But Gates was against it. He was going to leave Jamestown, such as it was, standing. And in order to make sure that at the last minute no one set it afire, he stayed on the riverbank until all 210 settlers were on board. Then, as a farewell salute, he had a company of men fire their muskets. And this is where we're going to take a little break. We will continue with Chapter 3, Part 2 of Chapter 3 in just a minute.